we're live. Welcome to the Short Convos podcast here with Asmiralai and
JC, Warrior of Light Cashman, and we're all over everything, can't we?
We are all over everything. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you like to listen to your favorite podcasts.
As we had a comment on our, I think it was a YouTube channel, and the comment puzzled me slightly, actually, to be honest. But we like to have a convo, don't we? So let's convo. So people, please do comment and everything. Did they say we spoke about a pregnant lady throwing themselves down the stairs? What on earth was that?
Apparently, the comment was basically two men mansplaining, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second, on mental health, whilst talking about pushing pregnant women down the stairs.
Yeah.
I've listened through it again just to be sure. I'm pretty sure we didn't mention pushing pregnant women down the stairs. Maybe they're referencing an old episode, but I still don't remember anything of the sort. I could be wrong. Welcome to timestamp it for anyone.
Let us know. Let us know. And this new word, it's a new word for me.
Mansplaining.
Yes. What is it?
Well, the origins of this word were from, I believe it was in 2008, a feminist wrote an article, or a woman who believes in feminism wrote an article, and this was on this phenomenon that happens where men interrupt women to explain something to them that they think they won't know. And this came across on this occasion. She was talking about the guy was trying to explain photography to her, and the photograph he was trying to explain happened to be her photograph. So it was just this idea that there's this weird conception that women know less about things and need men to explain it to them. I think that's the origins. I think the word has been a little perverse, for want of a better word, like overused, to now wherever a man gives his opinion on something, it must be that he's mansplaining, because it's just an ignorant man explaining himself, and therefore is wrong.
Well, we'll have to fix that, won't we? Let's get a female on at some point, and we'll fix that. Leave that with me. We'll fix that. Obviously,
although I must say, without getting into too much of a rant about it, I'm not keen on the word mansplaining. If you want to call us ignorant, or if you want to say that we were being condescending or patronizing, whatever you want to say, that's fine. You're well entitled to your opinion to do so. But I don't see why you have to associate it to our gender, to the fact that we're two men having a conversation about mental health. I just don't quite see where that kind of lies, other than to deal with your own personal agenda. There we go. We won't dwell on these things.
We won't dwell. But I suppose everyone's entitled, aren't they? Everyone's entitled. We have our opinion. They have their opinion.
Well, that's it. And we've said that if we're going to come on here and share our opinions, we've got to expect that people are going to comment every now and then and have a different opinion. Nothing wrong with it. But
that's where conversation starts, isn't it? Like, did I say this in a previous episode? If I have, I might be repeating. But who would you have around a dinner table if you could have any three people? Did we say this before?
We haven't. No, we might have.
So if you could have anyone round a dinner table, past or present, as in they don't have to be from the same decade, they could be thousands of years apart, alive or not, who would you have around the dinner table with you?
Okay, three people. I obviously don't need to know them. They could be celebs and all the rest of it.
We're throwing it out there. It could be anyone, really anyone.
Okay, David Attenborough would be one.
Good shout.
I just think he's done so much cool stuff, and there'd just be so much to talk about. I would love to listen to just him talk. Stephen Fry.
Okay.
I find him really interesting. I love some of his views on stuff, and then some of his things I find them quite polarizing. But I just think as a conversationalist, he'd be a good person to have round a table. And I feel like I should have a woman round the table just to balance things out a little bit. Who would I have? Probably Annie Lennox.
That's a good shout.
I love her music for a start, but I've always been fascinated about.
But would you be waiting in vain for her all of the time, or is it going to just be a bit of walking on glass?
I love the references. I
Yeah.
love it. But shoes, yeah, they would be my free. That would be my dinner table. I'd enjoy that meal. You?
Yeah. I could be boring and say Bruce Springsteen, Bruce Lee, people like that who are, inspiration and people you just want to chat to. So I'm
Yes.
not going to be boring and go, that wouldn't be boring for me, but I'm not going to give, based on what we started talking about, I would go with Nelson Mandela, Hitler, and Genghis Khan or someone like that, because I think that would make a good dinner table.
Yes.
And I think Genghis Khan was a cannibal as well, wasn't he? So I think
you know what you're eating.
Yeah, I think it would just make for good conversation. And that's what I have learned is someone very wise said to me earlier, not earlier, a little while back, that they associate themselves with people that are also healthy for them as well, that don't necessarily have the same views. It's important in business, in sport, in different things to have people that don't always yes sir, no sir, yes sir, no sir. Not necessarily be negative or have their own agenda. I don't mean it from that point of view, but someone that's going to have a different opinion. And yes. I had it. There's a guy that I work with the tournament side of things and that, and I'm very black and white. I'm very well. That's the rule. That's what it is. You're disqualified. Whereas he works very much in a shade of grey, and it's like, rules can be bent, they can be manipulated. And his point of view is because if you give someone something at one point, you're going to be able to get something from them at another point. So in a simple term of, all right, I'll let this one ride, but then when it comes, the shoes on the other foot, they can turn around and say, well, I let that one ride. Well, what about you this time? And I find that interesting, but I think too much of one thing isn't good, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. If your opinion is solely, you see this a lot with celebrities where they get surrounded by yes men. And then they end up going a little bit insane because just nothing they say is ever challenged or questioned. And then you end up in a place where you kind of feel you're infallible and can do no wrong. And then you start doing some real outlandish, mad stuff. Yeah, some wrong. And then things get a little out of control. Yeah, that's for sure. You gotta be comfortable with having conversations with people, like you said, that don't share the exact same values, because normally you learn something new from it, don't you?
Yeah, and it's that whole balancing energy again, isn't it?
Yes.
So let's be very British. Let's talk about the weather. How's the weather your end?
We did this last week. We get to carry it on. That's very British.
let's be very British. How's the weather
last week we
end?
had the heat wave and we were all passing out. This week we're in typical British fashion. It lasted all of a week, and now we're back to very classic British weather. It's wet, it's cold, it's grey. It can't decide if it's raining or not, so it only seems to do it sporadically for a moment. It's pretty standard British affair, I'd say. British summertime.
You said last week, like, you're solar powered. You need that ray, that sun. Do you notice immediate effects with the change of the weather?
No, but I really feel it in the winter. So after it's been about 3 months of rain and cloud, then I really it starts to wear on me a little bit. But a week here, a week there, even a month, it's not a problem. And then living in England, I've always said, if you can't get anything done because it's rainy and cloudy, you're living in the wrong country. You can't live here if you can't deal with rain and cloud, because it's just, that's the majority of the time, right? But no, so I don't feel it immediately. I just know that when the sun is on me, I'm better for it. So if I can get that more often, then I try to, but it's not the end of the day.
I find it's actually the reverse. Like, I don't notice the sun on me as such, but I notice when the weather changes like this. I don't know if it's an atmospheric thing goes on, but I notice myself and people around me, it's like you're hit with a lethargic bat, and it's I notice it when it changes like this, and people around you can just sense there's something like, obviously with the rain, everyone goes indoors, don't they? There's less, people in a hurry to get in and out of cars and indoors. So there's physical changes, but you don't notice that yourself.
Not as much. I'm aware of it, but I've tried to make a real point of not letting it be something that stops me. Just because it's just too much of it in the UK, too much rain to let it. So I've consciously push that feeling down of letting it get to me too much.
I've written it down actually. What's it called? Gong or something like that. There's a Chinese thing. I used to see this medicine man years ago, and he said about it. And there's a Chinese, like they have a lot of alternative medicine, and there's a knowledge and expression of saying about the change to shift this gong effect. Or I might not be using the right word. But yeah, how'd your week been?
The week's been fine. It's not been, I would say it's been a very undramatic week. I don't know about you, but with everything that's been going on in the world for the past few months, this week has felt very, oh, that was cute.
There's a little child.
I caught just the edge of it.
Poppy, do it again. Has missed it. We've got a Poppy in a penguin outfit for those that can't see it.
Good to see you. How are you? Good. Excellent. That's all we needed. Amazing.
Smile.
Yeah, it felt very undramatic, for want of a better word. It was just a very standard week albeit of the new standard. Nothing in particular jumped out at me. Did you notice anything this week other than the shift in weather?
Yeah, obviously there is that, but my word this week is adaptability.
Okay.
And I really noticed that over the last week. And I would like to think I'm quite a resourceful, adaptable person. However, I do like to always order the same thing from a restaurant, from like a takeaway or that kind of thing. I know what I like, but I'd like to feel I'm an adaptable person. And in this climate that we've lived in, for a good few months now, maybe indefinitely going forward, I've adapted. But I've noticed how some of the world isn't adapting. And some people are sort of sticking their heels in. And yesterday we had a kid come to the club to get his belt, and he's just waiting for it all to go back to normal. He's he's got some additional needs and everything. He's waiting for it to all go back to normal. Which is quite often the case. They like a certain structure and everything else, and I don't think it's going to be. And I think we're going to, unless we all learn, or is that just life itself? If we don't learn to adapt, then we're going to be stuck, aren't we?
Yeah, I think this is a bit of an extreme example of it that's bringing it to more people's attention. Because I think when people hear that adapt or overcome, it falls on deaf ears a lot of the time because they don't really see it affect them directly as much. It may be every now and then something happens in life to affect you directly, but I think where this has been such a worldwide thing and we are all, for better or for worse, affected, it's definitely something that more people are noticing, that there's certain people who are continuing to manage or to thrive, and there are certain people who are just being left behind. And it's not, you can't say it's their fault, but there's definitely a thing about personal responsibility and taking it on one's shoulders to make sure you do what you need to do to survive, to get on with stuff. And now it's beyond survive, isn't it? Because it's a case of, well, you got to make sure your kids are happy. You got to make sure that you're healthy. You just have to find a way to do these things within the confines of what's changed.
Yeah, and people can obviously listen to these podcasts at different times, so might be listening back when it will change again. But I'm really intrigued to see, like, if we've had 6 months of this now, what the next 6 months of it's gonna bring. What's changed in this 6 months, what could change again in another 6 months, and the adaptability that would be needed there.
Yeah, my word, if yours has been adapting, my word has been acceptance. I'm trying to just understand, and I guess it's part of the adapting process, that we can't do everything the way we would want to do them, but we can still do things. And I think that's something that's really important for people to get a handle on for their own well-being, just for your mental headspace. I think if you're always in a place of resistance where you're trying to fight against what is, that's just a bit of a miserable place to live your life in all the time. I don't know if it's necessary to just constantly be pushing against it.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
We spoke about that place, that pressure plate, a little while ago, didn't we? About
We
being in
did.
a place of resistance, but this is different. This isn't like striving to make yourself a better person and doing the extra hours, or saying things to people that need to be said, or whatever it is. This is different. This is more of an external thing, isn't it? What I was talking about there are more internal factors that you can control yourself, the way that you think, the way that you plan your day. You control that, but these are factors which I don't feel are in one's control, that you have to adapt to.
Do you remember the film Liar Liar with Jim Carrey?
Oh, I'm going to say I've seen it, but I can't be sure. I'm not
It's
sure.
where
I remember it coming out.
his kid made a wish that he couldn't tell a lie. So the whole film is based around him being forced to tell the truth.
It's quite an old film now, isn't it? I
Oh
can't
yeah,
really
we're
remember
talking
it.
early 90s. And there's
Yeah.
the first part of it where he's figuring out that he can only tell the truth. He's trying to resist it, and he gets this pen and he tries to say that the pen is red even though it's a blue pen. And then he's trying to write that it's red, but his body's just forced to write that it's blue. And he basically beats himself up over this pen, trying to convince himself that this pen is red, even though he knows and everyone knows that it's blue. And that's what I kind of feel like people are doing. There's some very clear, very obvious evidence of what's going on in the world right now, but people are so reluctant to accept it. Then you hear all this stuff about conspiracy theories and everything being done by the government and all of that, and it feels like you're fighting against something that just doesn't need to be fought against. I don't know. I might be completely in the wrong with that one. I'm not sure. But I just think, what is the point in putting so much energy into resisting what's happening right now?
Yeah, outside of your control.
Outside of your control. Yes, yes.
Like we did the podcast with Jaddy on Black Lives Matters. I think we all have a say in that. We all have a control over how we think. This pandemic, this virus, this whatever, it's come along. We just got to deal with it, haven't we?
Yeah, it's hard. And I feel bad that sometimes we always tend to talk about it, but I don't see how people can't talk about it, because it affects everything. It's like it's all encompassing at the moment. So to try and, I understand sometimes you need to do things to escape from it, but to pretend like it's not happening, which is what I feel like some people are doing. They're just pretending like it's done. I don't understand that thought process, other than it being like the animal sticking their head in the sand and hoping for the predator to go away.
Yeah. I can see you. You can see me.
Yeah, it's a strange attitude, but who knows?
I had a interesting one last night, conversation with our eldest daughter, and it was going down the line again last week. Was it last week or the week before? I've lost track now. We were talking about devices, weren't we? Last week. It was last week. We were talking about devices, and it came up. And she'd been really tired, like really tired day. She was all lethargic, etc. Without going into detail. And I suggested, look, we're all going to leave our devices downstairs, myself included. I could do with getting a load of bits. This is like 10 o'clock at night. I could do with getting a load of bits done, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it all downstairs. I'd like you to do the same. And CCRL, she's quite articulate. She doesn't just, run off in a teenage trot or anything. And she's like, I want to know why I can't have my device. And it's like, well, I think, come midnight, because she'd had a couple of late nights where she's staying up late, and everything else. And it's like, just tonight, leave it downstairs. And the short and long what I'm getting to is Lauren and I, our opinion, and her opinion wasn't meeting, because she doesn't remember life without a device. All of her life, there's been some screen that you could touch, but Lauren and I, my wife and I, remember before the devices, and we remember the benefit of that in comparison. And we were saying, Lauren was saying, quite happily, we'd like people to take our devices away. We do spend, and I do like devices. They're functional, they're useful, and really to a degree, we couldn't do what we do without them at the moment. But I do like the idea of being device free, especially occasionally. But we're trying to get her to understand that without taking away what is, I suppose, I can't think of another. It's like turning around and say you can't have a car, I
Yeah.
suppose, where when you've always had a car. I can't think of another, or you can't eat with knife and fork. You always, I can't think of another example. But you're a little bit younger than me. Do you remember a time before a phone? I remember a time before a computer. I remember the time we had the first computers, tiny computers, and everyone went out and bought a computer for the first time.
Yeah, well, so my dad was in computing from me being a very young age. He worked for Microsoft when I was 3 onwards. So I don't remember a childhood without computers, laptops, phones being around. So no, personally, I don't. It obviously definitely happens, but it didn't happen for me. But I really do feel the benefit of very intentionally taking breaks from technology. And in particular for me, social media. So I've now got in the habit of physically deleting the applications from my phone. I go that far. And it's because I've identified in myself, I struggle to have a healthy relationship with it. And that's the friction I need to put between me and it to make sure that I don't overuse it or overpost or anything like overconsume. And I found what I've realized is it's just so easy. Like you delete it, it takes all of a second. And when I want it back, it takes all of a second to get it back. It doesn't take that long. But when I kind of automatically pick up my phone and go, but, and it's not there, it interrupts the pattern in my head. And I go, you know what? I don't need to check Instagram right now. I don't need to check Facebook. I can do something else. And I find if I do that for a few days in a row, I just feel better. Just in general, in every way, shape and form, a little less anxious, a little less concerned with everything else. I just do better if it's less technology. So that if Cece's listening to this, my recommendation would be just try it on your own accord, because I think that's the other thing. Maybe you taking it away.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. But if
this was our point yesterday, we weren't trying to take it away, because I do that. I do that. You know, we take it as a good punishment tool.
Yes.
But it wasn't. That's our point. We were saying this isn't a punishment. This isn't. We're just trying to you to understand a time there was before it, and it wasn't all bad.
I've got the analogy you want. It's like someone who's always eaten unhealthy. They've just always ate junk food all the time. They don't know how good it feels to eat healthy food and have that feeling of when you're a bit more, you've got more energy and all the rest of it. And you hear people all the time and they say, but I feel fine. Like, I eat what I eat and I feel fine. It's like, I'm sure you do, but you have no point of reference of how good you could feel if you didn't. And I think that's the thing is you have a point of reference of how clear your mind felt or whatever it was that happens when you don't use it. And she doesn't have that point of reference. Just
point of reference is coming out for sure. Going to use that one. And this kind of ties into what I was going to mention next. And I think it came up. Have you got the bell ready?
I've got the bell ready.
I think it came up when we did our martial arts special. I was thinking about that whole process of growing up, and I don't think you ever stop growing up. No. I don't think you ever, like, it's only an age, but I don't think you ever become an adult. You just have to behave like an adult or choose to use your experience by an adult. Does that make sense, Stu?
Yeah. I like that. I don't remember where I heard it. I don't know if it's a song lyric, but kids having kids is something that I've just always found a bit funny, because the idea, you're like, you see your parents, you only ever see them as adults. You never perceive them as children or teenagers, but in a certain respect in their own minds, they're just kids having kids. And then, like you said, you just kind of grow up by proxy of what happens to you, just by experience and life. And some people grow up a lot less than others, don't they?
Yeah, I think that can be sometimes down to what you experience through life as well. Your maturity comes at different stages from that. And I would have said myself personally, I've been immature for a longer period of time. just in my general way of thinking and doing, I would say, not even in a negative sense, just emotionally involved. And then I grew up really quickly in a really short amount of time. And, on the apps where, here, using devices as an analogy, where it shows like the storage amounts, I would say, I had quite a real comfortable period for some time where I didn't really have to take on much responsibility. And all of a sudden, all this shit happened. And then it's like, okay, I'm now really responsible. Do you feel your growing up has been quite steady?
I have really clear memories of always being told I was an old man in a young man's body. People used to call me, I used to say I had one foot in the grave, but like as a teenager, like I was a grumpy old man just moaning at the world. So I've always had what old man energy is what I call it. But I've definitely felt the growth spurts at different stages in life. Like you said, shit happens and then you go, oh man, like I need to level up being a grown up at this point because I got to take this on board and grow. But I can see why you would have had it the way you feel like you experienced it. My earliest memory of feeling like, oh, I need to grow up now is when my parents got divorced and my dad moved out. And then suddenly I felt a responsibility.
I am the man.
I am man of house, or everyone else is woman. I must learn to, change light bulb, fix door handle, blah, blah, blah. That was my earliest thing where I was like,
Is that you being a very, whatever that word was earlier?
I was saying to my wife before we started today, I have to be careful not to say manscaping. That's what I keep accidentally trying to say, which is a very different thing. And it nearly slipped out there. I got it under control. Mansplainer. Yeah, no, not manscaper. Yeah. No, I try not to be. Maybe it's applying to our gender norms. I don't know.
What I find with this whole growing up experience, and I've noticed, I can't bring an example at the moment, but I have noticed is I'm now answering questions, like as a parent more than so than anything, but I'm answering questions as the grown up when I remember being the child or the less grown up asking. I've been asked by people, by my children, a question, and I can remember asking that same question. And it's, that's what I kind of mean by it all. It's really these stages of growing up. I have to try and think of an example.
Would you say you gave the answer you received?
On occasions, yes. On occasions.
Ever like the polar opposite?
I'm going to have to think of some examples for you that. A bit of everything, actually. A bit of everything. I think we live in a different time to some of the questions that I was asking when I was back then. Like, for instance, the sport side of things. I've got people asking me about the sport or advice with the sport. And I'm giving the polar opposite now because we are just in a different time with the sport. The sport, things have evolved. Whereas there's other life stones that you're being asked about, and you do give the same answer because it's black and white. It is what it is.
Yeah. Do you find you get some questions more than others? Are there certain questions you find you're answering all the time?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think as you get older, you can almost script some things, especially in business. As you get wiser in business and things like that, I think there's certain scripts that you can turn to, and you have like I've experienced this with you, that kind of person before, and it's sort of a default kind of answer. Yes. We're well past it now, but there's a great stage with kids where their brain is this sponge that is just asking a question all the time. What's that?
The why stage.
Yeah, I've seen so many parents get so fed up with it, but I just loved it because you could just give this sponge information and that. I really, really enjoyed that stage. So that's another example of growing up. I can remember being a kid asking, why is that? Why is this? Why is that? I've now been sat in the chair being asked why is
Being
this? Why
asked
is
the
that? But
whys.
yeah, that's a good example. Like for instance, a car. You know, why is that on the car? Why is this on the car? And I'm obviously giving the same answers because the car's not really changed. It's four wheels and a steering wheel, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And that. So yeah, it's last few weeks I've really thought about that, the whole growing up stage, and also because my wife turns into a new decade this year. I also turn 40 next year, and it's like they're just, I don't look at age as a thing, but it's certainly a significant thing, isn't it?
It's a
another,
milestone.
yeah. And like my brother and I, we both changed decade in the same year, and we're celebrating a 90th.
Nice.
And it's like, that's like, wow, it's like,
that's cool.
Crazy. And
am I right in saying your wife and her brother are doing the same thing?
Yeah, so they're born in the O's, the 80s, 90s, and my brother and I were born in the 81s, 71s. So this year they would be celebrating their 70th, and yeah, we're doing our 90th next year. So
yeah, that's cool. I'd say on that topic, I always think about the journey back to childhood when you get very old. We've recently been dealing with my wife's grandparents who have got to that very late stage of life. They've been very lucky to live a very full life to the point where they end up needing full-time care again. And it's like this weird regression almost back to childhood where you become fully dependent on someone else to care for you again. And one of the grandmas, the one who we're kind of experiencing at the minute, she's so resistant to it, and it's so understandable because you just think, I'm a grown-up, I don't need anyone to look after me. I've been looking after myself. I raised my kids, I raised my grandkids, I survived this long. Why do I need you to come and look after me? And that must be, well, we're not there yet, but that must be a very strange period if you get to that stage where you physically can't stand up to go to the toilet or something.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot because it's what gave my dad a lot of torment, seeing his mother and father grow old, and like my grandmother and grandfather, particularly the pride side of things, because may rest in peace. My grandmother, she in her latter years had quite bad severe dementia, and you saw her proudness disappear purely because of the, is it classed as a disease or brain? It's a disease.
It's a disease
because of it. And my dad he just found a lot with a load of other things that really difficult to understand. So I have contemplated it a lot. And right now, of my young age, I'm like, I ain't having anyone touch me. I ain't having anyone wipe my ass, or
Same.
I'm happy checking out, mate. I don't want anything. But I do wonder, like my grandfather was complete opposite. You could see he had gone through a number of years where, like, we used to go around and he hadn't eaten for 3 days, and we're like, Granddad, why didn't you say something? He's like, he was, such a lovely man, and he'd be like,
don't want to be in trouble.
I'd say, yeah, we'll done with it, and I'd say to Lou, and she's like, shut up, you've eaten every day a full meal, but she just couldn't remember. And that was the problem. So like she passed first, and then he was in the care home, and he was loving it. He was loving it, having all these young Thai birds looking after him and everything else. And it was like, good on you. You've had a bit of a tough break for a while. You've seen quite a bit, and good on you. But for me, I've made it quite clear to my kids, I don't want none of that.
That's what I said to my wife. I was like, if I'm going down that route first, just do me a favor and finish me off. Yeah, please. No, just no need. It's but yeah, like you said, we're saying that with our relatively young minds. Maybe we'll soften and change in 20 years. I don't know. Yeah. But got to see where that goes. I find that journey so interesting, from dependent child, independent adult, and then in some way or another dependent old person before you go, if you're lucky to get that far.
It's it's going to be an interesting journey for sure.
To
For
say the
sure.
least.
And I
say
don't
the
mean to
least.
make that all morbid. Like some people might check in on this and go, "Oh, that's quite a bit of a morbid." I don't find that at all. And I've had people say that before when you've gone down that route. And that's what I like being able to chat to you and converse with you is you can talk about these things. And I wonder how many people think about it but don't talk about it because it's a bit of a taboo kind of subject, isn't it?
It's scary, and I think there's nothing wrong with admitting that there's a fear of death because it's the unknown. We really you can have all the faith you want in whatever you want, but we really don't know what's on the other side of that curtain until we go there. And I think that's scary for people. And like we said earlier about putting your head in the sand, you can't see me, I can't see you. For a lot of people, that's just how they cope with it. I find staring it in the face is a bit more interesting. I'd rather have the conversation.
I like punching it in the face. You coming for me? I'm going to chase you away.
Well, that's it. To each their own on it, but I think it's the most interesting thing people can kind of contemplate on because there really is no right answer on it. But therefore it's just such an open-ended conversation. We can all have an opinion on it, but we really just don't know until we get there.
Yeah.
And then when we get there, we can't even tell anyone. So
no, exactly. It's a bit of What was that then we said about CC? What do I need to say to her? It wasn't perspective.
Point of reference.
She
needs a point of reference.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what that one is.
Uncle has said that.
I remember my baby brother, who's 20 years younger than me. He really has never been without with a scream. And he was on the floor when he was maybe one, crawling around, and he found a magazine and he was doing this to the magazine, thinking it was an iPad because he had no concept of it being paper. And you could just see the visible confusion on his face as he's trying to scroll on this page of a magazine. So I'm sure she ain't that bad.
Yeah, no, we're not there. We're not there. Well, we're off to celebrate both Lauren's birthday and our anniversary. We're out for a meal tonight. I believe you are out as well, aren't you?
The universe collides us once again. You look a lot more ready for it than I do, so I better go sort myself out.
Yeah, you better go sort it out. So we'll catch up again next week. Everyone, please comment. Tell us when we're doing something. We want some arguments. Come on, bring it.
Yes, please tell us how ignorant and arrogant we are. We love it.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
We'll see you on the next one, guys. Peace.